Really exciting guest for you today, Jeff Clements. He's the president of American Promise. He's also the author of Corporations Aren't People. Still can't believe he had to write that one. Yeah,
Me neither.
but he does some of the best work in this movement to end corruption of anyone in the country. He's a tireless warrior, so he's perfect for this weekend. And just thank you, Jeff, for all the work that you do and all the work that American Promise is doing. And I'm really excited to learn from you today. You know, every time I've heard you talk, it's always informative. So I think our audience will get quite a bit out of it. So thanks for being here.
Great, Mike. Well, thank you. And thanks to everybody at Wolfpack and everybody out there joining us today. It's really great to be with you. I always learn a lot from all of you too. So I hope this will be a conversation after I share some thoughts and some slides, which I'll put up in just a second, and then introduce my friend and colleague at American Promise, Azer Cole, who's going to give us some election-related work that we can do, and some great work that Wolfpack and American Promise and others are doing to deploy our power of the people into what kind of government we're going to have after November. So I will get to that, but let me start with some slides. I'm gonna share my screen and just share some thoughts, and then we'll open it up. So here goes.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
All right. Okay. So let's imagine a couple of different countries. This is one where everyone's voice matters. The government actually listens to the people. We have elections that are competitive. There's good candidates, there's ideas, there's debate. It's driven by the people, like the last conversation and brand new Congress talked about, where sure, there's money to get ads and there's money to get your message out, but most of the money comes from lots and lots of people in the kind of amounts that everyday Americans can actually participate in, rather than dominated by concentrated elite money of the few. Imagine a country where representatives are tending to constituents, listening to them, thinking about the needs of the country, rather than pandering to, chasing, or being intimidated by a few powerful elite donors. Imagine a country where problems were solved, crises avoided, communities were healthy, and people had a chance to live decent lives. That's the country that America is going to be and was meant to be. It's liberty, it's opportunity. It's, in the words of the founders, Americans in the pursuit of happiness. That's what happiness looks like, right? Now imagine another kind of country. There's no Bill of Rights. There's no ban on human slavery. There's no due process, no protection of the laws for everybody on equal terms. There's no right for women to vote or people of color to vote. Senators aren't elected. They're appointed in a backroom corrupt process. You can't vote unless you pay a poll tax. And by the way, you can't have a progressive income tax because the powerful, wealthy say that that would violate their rights. And there's no term limits for presidents. That's a very different kind of country. That's the kind of country we have without constitutional amendments. So I want to talk about not just the power of the Constitution, the power of constitutional amendments. Every one of these things that are really hard to imagine, no Bill of Rights, right? No women voting. The only reason that's not the country we live in is because the people, just like us, drove constitutional amendments into the Constitution and made the kind of government that we'd much rather imagine. And that's what we have to do again. So let's talk about the constitutional amendments, the power of the constitutional amendment we're all working on together, why we need it, what it'll do, how we get it done. So when my grandmother was born, she was born in Chicago. I remember her well. So this is not ancient history and the old days before any of us were here. And I get it, I'm maybe a little older than some of you, but this is not that long ago. My grandmother was born in Chicago. When she turned 18. Of course, 18-year-olds couldn't vote, but women couldn't vote either. She turned 21, and because of a struggle that took over 50 years, she was able to vote. The first woman in my family as far back into ancient history, probably forever, probably since the beginning of time, the first woman in my family to cast a ballot because of the 19th Amendment, where women won the right to vote. It was 100 years ago today, 1920, it was ratified. We're celebrating the anniversary of that amendment. My grandmother died, and I remember that well too, later in the 20th century, much later. In her lifetime, 12 constitutional amendments happened. And they didn't just happen. The people made 12 constitutional amendments, passed, ratified, trying to build that country that we imagine where people are equal, where happiness is and the pursuit thereof is possible. And they did it 12 times. So that's kind of a challenge to all of us, I think. It's certainly a challenge to me. Like, why would anyone think we can't do that? There were 12 of them in her lifetime. So of course we can do that. And of course we have to. So how do we do it? When do they happen? Why do we have to do amendments? Well, look at the pattern of constitutional amendments. They happen when you get a demand for equality, for justice, for sort of a rejection of an intolerable status quo, right? And then you have crisis because the old anachronistic doctrine, usually imposed by the Supreme Court against the intentions of the people or the Constitution as it should be, you get meltdown, right? You get crisis and meltdown, and you get amendments all at once. So let's look at this. And there's a lot of text on this, but I'll walk you through quickly. Basically, you get a demand for equality, and this is after the American Revolution, but Americans remembered it well. And you had the Shays Rebellion, you had economic challenges, you had riots, you had social unrest, and you had dysfunctional government. And then you got the Constitution, and the people said no almost immediately out of Philadelphia, 1787. The people said not good enough, and we ratified 10 amendments for the Bill of Rights. Free press, free speech, privacy in your home, due process, so many things in the Bill of Rights, only because of amendments. And then the Supreme Court botched a decision about federalism, and we got almost immediately the people corrected the Supreme Court and overturned that decision with the 11th Amendment. This happens again and again. The Civil War was the culmination of a demand for justice, freedom, a rejection of intolerable constitutional anachronism that allowed human slavery and rejection of equality, regardless of race. And we needed the great amendments of the post-Civil War to actually renew the American promise, banning slavery, guaranteeing equal protection, guaranteeing voting rights regardless of race. It happened again in the progressive era. Again, meltdown, again, unrest, again, dysfunctional government, again, war, again, pandemic with the flu pandemic. And we did 4 constitutional amendments in the space of 10 years. And again, reset the American promise for another run. We did it again in the 60s. 4 constitutional amendments in 10 years again. And they're big deals. They're civil rights. They're equal rights for 18, 19, 20-year-olds to vote, for representation for DC residents, to abolish the poll tax. Big things. And now we see our time, and we see the same thing, a demand for equality, a rejection of this dysfunctional, unjust, unequal ideology imposed by the Supreme Court. So every one of those cases on the far right by the Supreme Court trying to say that we can't have the kind of country that we imagine were reversed. And now we have a set of our Supreme Court decisions to reverse with a constitutional amendment. So it is time. The moment has come. We have the amendment. We have the strategy. We have the powerful movement that we have been building together, all of us. And we have the crisis and the meltdown and the failure of the old order to try to impose oligarchy and inequality and injustice, and we have the demand. So it is time, and we need to seize this moment. This is a historical opportunity that we can't miss, and so we have to we have to get it right, or we will again be blocked from the kind of country we imagine. What is the amendment we need? Of course, you know at Wolfpack very well. It is about putting hands in the power of people, not the concentrated, powerful elites who drive most of the money now into our political system. Look at this concentration of power. 90% of outside money, i.e., the super PACs, the thing that was opened up by Citizens United, comes from 300 donors. 300 donors. Nearly half of the money comes from 25 people, and 30% comes from six people, six donors, 30% of the outside money. And that is oligarchy. That's aristocracy. That's massively dangerous, concentrated power, and it's an urgent threat to our democratic way of life. That is not coming from some far, left or far right, scaremonger. That's coming from the a nonpartisan commission on the practice of democratic citizenship that just came out of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences last month, and it has a set of recommendations that we must do by July 4th, 2026, the 250th anniversary of American independence. And one of the key recommendations is our constitutional amendment, so that we can end that regime of powerful money and have reasonable regulations and limits on money to ensure that the people are powering our elections and funding them. And this is not, again, like the commission recognized, and we all recognize, some fringe idea, or just one part of the political spectrum. Look at this poll. Um, this is a deep study after the 2016 election, when everybody, the sort of conventional wisdom was trying to figure out, what did we miss, what went wrong, how that Washington was in a you know trying to comprehend what happened in the 2016 election. Well, they found out what happened was there is massive consensus that the government is dominated and run by a few big interests, not the people. Look at the Trump supporters. And interestingly, this came out of Voice of the People out of the University of Maryland. Angry Trump supporters, it's nearly 100%. And then you go to the other side, angry Clinton voters, it's nearly 100%. So there's just massive consensus when we're told we're divided about the fundamental problem that we have been groping for as a solution in this country, is that government is run by a few big interests, not for the benefit of the people. And I know you all know that, but that's why we need a constitutional amendment, and we should just be super clear about it. This amendment is so that the people will power our elections and power our lives, and we will be the decision makers, and the government will be run for the benefit of all of us. We might not like all the answers. We most certainly won't. We will argue with each other. We'll fight with each other. We will debate different approaches, but we will be deciding those ourselves in hard-fought competitive elections, powered by the money of many, many people, not a few big donors. That's what we need to do. And when we do that, this constitutional amendment will do so much to it's constitutional amendments are really interesting. If you look at all of them, they're very short in terms of the words. The right to free speech shall not be infringed. Uh, the people have equal protection of the laws. The right will not be denied to women to vote. Very simple concepts that have massive systemic change and impact. And that's what this one will do. We will limit contributions and spending in elections, ballot initiatives. We will limit the dominating, overwhelming noise of a few, so that the many can be heard and debate, and we will combat systemic corruption. We'll lock equal rights of all the people to be heard into the Constitution. and make our government more effective. That's what this amendment will do. So how do we win? Wolfpack has a lot on that, so I don't need to belabor that. American Promise does as well. Many other organizations and people, mostly. I want to say a few things about each of these people: unity, state-based, Congress, elections. This is how we win. Now, the people, what does that mean? Okay, there's millions and millions of people who support this. We know that. So many of them are not yet rolling up their sleeves, finding their way into our work yet. We have to open up this movement to everybody in this country. And that doesn't mean we all do the same thing, but we really got to work hard to realize that people are looking to get involved to help. And let's not overcomplicate it or, argue with each other about different strategies or, deprive Americans of the tools and the clear actions that they need. And I think we are all doing that increasingly well, and we're really moving forward. And of course, it also means that the people will have different views about why they're in this, and that gets to unity. The Republican argument for this constitutional amendment is not going to be the same as the Democratic argument. The reason why business people might support this, they do support this very much, but those reasons will be different than why some in labor might support this. We have to allow those differences, strengthen ourselves with those differences, and be ready to amplify and deploy the right messenger in the right place to have maximum impact. And we will all learn a lot from each other. I know we do when you hear the different perspectives about why people of different viewpoints, different politics, different backgrounds, different everything will end up with the same goal, even though they get there in very different ways. That's part of unity. Part of unity is our organizations, and thanks to Wolfpack for the uniting, and we'll talk more about that at 6 o'clock. Hope you'll tune in. The different organizations, American Promise does that as well. We can have different strategies. We can all be different too, and still be united. We need to unite around, as I said, cross-partisan. We need to unite on strategy and align our strategies better. That gets to state-based. The way amendments happen are in the states. Congress is often the last to know. And by states, I don't mean just figure out a way through the state legislature alone. The state legislatures go with us when the people of that state are with us, when you have labor and business and farmers and urban people and outdoors hunters, fishermen, and outdoor enthusiasts and environmentalists. When you have networks in the states and the political ways those different networks express themselves across partisan lines, when you have them organized and supporting, you get the state legislatures. When you get the state legislatures, you get Congress. So let me talk about Congress. I know there is a good, healthy debate, as there always is in American history and with constitutional amendments, about how does the amendment get proposed? Is Congress really going to do something that changes the system by which they got there? Or do we need to get the states to call a convention to propose the amendment and then get it ratified? Wolfpack has long focused on that state convention call for the proposing this amendment strategy. And many of our predecessors did the same in order to make amendments happen. All 27 amendments were passed by Congress, proposed by Congress, ratified by the states. And I believe this one will be too. But many of those only happened because people were doing what Wolfpack's doing, pushing in the states for a convention. And so that is got to be part of the strategy, but we can't ignore Congress. We have 220 sponsors of a good amendment in the House. We have 47 in the Senate. The media pays attention to Congress. Ultimately, Congress will either vote to call the convention, if that's what's going to happen, or they will vote for this constitutional amendment to go to the states for ratification. But we need a congressional strategy, and we have it. So that's good. Finally, elections are a big deal, of course, as we've been hearing. We have to drive this into the election. We have to make sure candidates are very clear about where they stand on our constitutional amendment, and and um, and whether they vote for it, or whether they'll support it or not. If they don't, the people should know that and shouldn't vote for them. If they do support the amendment, that's great. That's a big factor for people to support those candidates. So we have a candidate pledge program that we can deploy right now in this election, and it is going forward. Wolfpack's getting candidates pledged. Other organizations are getting candidates pledged. American Promise is getting candidates pledged, and that is the legendary Azer Cole at American Promise, our state's manager, scooping ice cream with Ben and Jerry's founder Ben Cohen at our congressional lobby day. Azer also manages our candidate pledge program, among so many other great things Azer does with us. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen and turn it over to Azer Cole.